He married a maid to win a bet, but she wasn't who she seemed. Before we continue, if you're drawn to stories of kindness, heartbreak, and second chances, consider subscribing and giving this video a like. Your support keeps these stories alive. Now, back to our story. The crystal chandeliers sparkled overhead as Marcus Blackwell stood in the center of the ballroom, his arm wrapped around his new wife, Sarah. The reception was everything money could buy. Elegant, expensive, perfect. But the whispers were something else entirely. His friends clustered near the bar, champagne glasses raised, eyes darting between Marcus and the woman in the simple ivory dress beside him. She didn't belong here. Everyone knew it. The dress was off the rack. No designer label, no diamond necklace. Just Sarah, looking comfortable in a world that was clearly designed to make her feel small. Then Derek approached, Marcus's oldest friend, 6'2" of pure arrogance and old money. He clapped Marcus on the shoulder, leaning in close, voice low but not low enough. "I can't believe you actually went through with it." Marcus forced a smile. "Stay calm. Play it cool." Derek's eyes slid to Sarah, then back to Marcus. His grin widened. "A maid, Marcus? You married a maid? For $1 million?" The words hung in the air like smoke. Thick, suffocating. Marcus felt his chest tighten. He'd been so careful, so calculated. How did she? He turned to look at Sarah. She'd heard everything, but her face didn't fall. Her eyes didn't fill with tears. Instead, something else happened. Something Marcus didn't expect. She smiled, not a nervous smile. Not an embarrassed smile. A knowing smile. Mysterious. Calm. Like she'd been waiting for this exact moment. Marcus's blood ran cold. What have I done? 3 weeks earlier, Marcus Blackwell had been sitting in the VIP section of the Apex Club, surrounded by his closest friends. The kind of friends who measured success in zeros, in status and square footage. Derek, Tyler, Jason, all of them born into wealth, all of them convinced they were untouchable. Marcus swirled his whiskey, laughing at some joke Tyler had made about his latest acquisition. A yacht, because why not? At 32, Marcus had built a tech empire from the ground up. Monarch AI, his company, was valued at over $2 billion. He'd done it himself. No trust fund, no shortcuts. Just ruthless ambition and a mind that never stopped calculating. Derek leaned back in his chair, studying Marcus with that competitive glint in his eye. "You know what your problem is, Marcus?" Marcus raised an eyebrow. "Enlighten me. You think you can win anyone over? Any deal, any negotiation, any woman." The table went quiet. Tyler and Jason exchanged glances. Marcus set his glass down slowly. "That's not a problem, Derek. That's a fact." Derek laughed. "Prove it." "How?" "Marry someone beneath your status, someone who doesn't fit in our world. Convince her it's real love. Stay married for 6 months. The challenge hung in the air. Tyler whistled low. "That's cold, man." Derek ignored him. Eyes locked on Marcus. "If you pull it off, I'll give you $1 million. If you don't, you give me $1 million. Marcus felt the familiar rush of competition flood his veins. He lived for this. The game. The chase. The win. Deal. They shook hands. The bet was on. The conditions were simple. She had to be someone who clearly didn't belong in his world. He had to convince her the marriage was based on real love, not manipulation. And they had to stay married for at least 6 months. If she found out about the bet before then, Marcus lost. Easy. Or so he thought. 2 days later, Marcus was working late at the Monarch AI headquarters. The building was mostly empty, just security and the overnight cleaning crew. He was walking toward the elevator when he saw her. She was on her knees, scrubbing the baseboards near the conference room. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her uniform plain and worn. But there was something about the way she moved. Focused, dignified, like the work didn't define her. Marcus stopped. She was beautiful. Not in the polished, Instagram-perfect way he was used to. Natural. Real. 28, maybe 30, and completely unaware he was watching, Perfect. He cleared his throat. She looked up, startled. Then her expression shifted, guarded. Can I help you? She asked, her voice steady. Marcus turned on the charm, the smile that had closed million-dollar deals. I'm Marcus. I own the company. She stood slowly, wiping her hands on her uniform. I know who you are. And you are. Busy. He blinked. No one talked to him like that. She picked up her cleaning supplies and started to walk away. Wait, Marcus called after her. I didn't catch your name. She paused, glancing back over her shoulder. That's because I didn't give it. Then she was gone, disappearing around the corner, leaving Marcus standing in the empty hallway. Intrigued for the first time in years, he found out her name was Sarah Mitchell, 28 years old, worked for the cleaning company contracted with his building. No social media presence, no digital footprint beyond the basics. She kept to herself, did her job, went home. Marcus started staying late more often, accidentally running into her, bringing an extra coffee, offering small talk. She was polite but distant. I'm not interested in whatever game you're playing, she said one night, not even looking up from the trash bin she was replacing. Who says I'm playing a game? She finally met his eyes. Men like you always are. The resistance only made him want to win more. Over the next week, he learned small pieces about her. She lived alone in a modest apartment across town. She worked hard, sometimes pulling double shifts. She read constantly, classic literature, philosophy, books that surprised him. And she had integrity, a kind of quiet strength that made her stand out in a way designer dresses never could. She was intelligent, well-spoken, unimpressed by his wealth. She was perfect for the bet. But as he spent more time around her, something unexpected started to happen. He found himself actually enjoying their conversations, the way she challenged him, the way she didn't bend to his will. It made the game more interesting, and Marcus Blackwell always loved a good game. If you're enjoying this story so far, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We share incredible stories about love, redemption, and life's unexpected turns. Don't miss what happens next. Here's a question for you. Have you ever met someone who completely saw through you from the very first moment? Drop your answer in the comments below. Marcus became a ghost in Sarah's life, always there, but never too obvious. He timed his departures from the office to match her cleaning schedule. Accidental encounters in the lobby, chance meetings by the elevator, each one carefully orchestrated. We keep running into each other, he'd say with that practiced smile. Sarah would nod, polite but distant. It's a big building, bound to happen. But Marcus was patient. He brought 2 coffees one night, claiming he'd ordered an extra by mistake. Sarah hesitated before accepting it. A small victory. The next night, he asked about the book she was reading. Camus, The Stranger. She talked about existentialism and the absurdity of existence while emptying trash cans, and Marcus found himself genuinely listening. When it started raining one evening, he offered her a ride home. She declined. He insisted. She finally agreed, but only after making him wait while she finished her shift. Integrity. Always integrity. In his Tesla, she sat quietly, watching the city lights blur past the window. Why do you do this? Marcus asked. Do what? Work so hard. You could, I don't know, find something easier. She turned to look at him, really look at him. Because honest work matters, Marcus. It's the one thing no one can take from you. He filed that away. Honesty. She valued honesty above all else. The irony wasn't lost on him. Over the next 2 weeks, Sarah slowly opened up. Small pieces of information, carefully shared. She lived alone in a 1-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood his friends wouldn't be caught dead in. No family. Parents died years ago. No siblings. Just her and her books and her work. Don't you get lonely? He asked one night. Loneliness is just another word for independence, she replied. I learned a long time ago that you can't rely on anyone but yourself. Marcus played his part perfectly. The misunderstood rich guy. The man who had everything but felt empty. He told her about building his company, about the pressure, about how everyone wanted something from him. How refreshing it was to meet someone who didn't. It was a script he'd perfected, and it was working. Sarah's guard lowered. Not completely, but enough. She smiled more, laughed at his jokes, let him drive her home without protest. They started having dinner together after her shifts, nothing fancy, just late-night diners and honest conversation. And then, after 2 weeks of this carefully constructed courtship, Marcus made his move. He showed up at her apartment on a Saturday evening. She answered the door in jeans and an oversized sweater, surprised to see him. "Marcus, what are you doing here?" "Can I come in?" Her apartment was small, tiny really, but clean. Books everywhere, a single window overlooking a brick wall. This was where she lived. This was her world. Marcus turned to face her, his heart pounding, not from nervousness, from the thrill of closing the deal. "Sarah, I know this is fast." She crossed her arms, waiting. "But I feel something real with you. Something I've never felt before." He paused, letting the words settle. "Marry me." The silence stretched between them like a tightrope. Sarah didn't gasp, didn't cry. She just stood there, studying him with those intelligent eyes that always seemed to see more than they should. "Why me, Marcus?" "Really?" He'd prepared for this question, rehearsed it a dozen times. "Because you're the first person I've met who sees me, not my bank account. You challenge me. You don't need me, and that makes me need you." He stepped closer. "You're authentic in a world full of fakes. That's rare. That's everything." She watched him for what felt like an eternity. Her expression was unreadable, calm, almost calculating. Then finally she spoke. "Okay." Marcus blinked. "Okay. Yes, Marcus, I'll marry you." Relief flooded through him. He'd done it. The bet was on track. But as he pulled her into an embrace, he caught something in her reflection in the window behind her. A small smile. Not happy, not surprised, knowing, like she'd expected this all along. The wedding happened fast, too fast for anyone to question it, which was exactly what Marcus wanted. A small ceremony at City Hall, nothing extravagant. His friends showed up, Derek, Tyler, Jason, all of them wearing expressions that danced between amusement and disbelief. Sarah wore a simple white dress, not cheap but not designer, elegant in its simplicity. She had no family there, no friends. "I don't have anyone," she'd explained when he asked. "It's just me." That should have made Marcus feel guilty. It didn't. It made the bet easier. No one to interfere, no one to expose him. The officiant read the standard vows: love, honor, cherish. All the promises people make before they break them. Marcus said his lines perfectly, smiling at Sarah like she was the only person in the room. But when it was Sarah's turn to say, "I do," something strange happened. She looked at him, really looked at him. Her eyes locked onto his with an intensity that made his skin prickle. It wasn't love. It wasn't nervousness. It was something else entirely. Recognition. Like she could see straight through him, through the charm, through the manipulation, through everything. Marcus's throat tightened. Then she smiled softly and said, "I do." The reception was at an upscale restaurant Marcus had rented out. His friends drank expensive champagne and made subtle jokes. Tyler kept staring at Sarah like she was a puzzle he couldn't solve. Jason whispered to his date, both of them glancing over with barely concealed mockery. But Sarah moved through it all with grace, calm, unbothered by the obvious judgment radiating from every corner of the room. Marcus stood beside her, playing the role of loving husband when Derek approached. His oldest friend, his biggest competition. "I can't believe you actually went through with it." Marcus forced a smile. "Keep it together." Derek's eyes slid to Sarah, then back. "A maid, Marcus? You married a maid? For $1 million?" The words landed like a bomb. Marcus's heart stopped. He turned slowly towards Sarah. She'd heard. Of course she'd heard. Derek had said it loud enough. This was it. The bet was over. She'd leave, expose him. He'd lose everything. But Sarah didn't cry, didn't yell, didn't storm out. She smiled, that same mysterious smile from her apartment. Calm, knowing, like she'd been waiting for this exact moment her entire life. And Marcus realized with a chill that ran down his spine that he had no idea who he just married. Marcus had imagined this moment 100 times, bringing Sarah to his penthouse for the first time, watching her eyes go wide as she stepped into the marble-floored entryway, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, the original artwork on the walls, the custom furniture that cost more than most people's cars. He wanted to see her overwhelmed, amazed, out of her depth. Instead, Sarah walked in, set her small bag down, and moved through the space like she'd been there before. No gasps, no wide-eyed stares. She ran her fingers along the marble countertop in the kitchen, glanced at the view and nodded approvingly. "It's nice," she said simply. "Nice?" Marcus watched her disappear into the bedroom, heard her opening closets, settling in like this was the most natural thing in the world. He'd expected questions. "Where does this go? How does that work? Can I really touch this?" Nothing. Over the next few days, Marcus waited for Sarah to stumble, to reveal her lack of experience with his world. He tried to teach her things, guide her, show her how to navigate luxury. One evening, he opened a bottle of wine at dinner, a 2015 in Chateau Margaux. Expensive, refined. "This is a Bordeaux," he explained, swirling the glass. "One of the finest wines in the world. You'll taste notes of black currant, maybe some violet." Sarah took a sip, considered it, then set the glass down gently. "It's actually a 2016, not a 2015, she said, her tone casual. "You can tell by the tannin structure. The 2015 was softer. This has more grip." Marcus stared at her. "How did you know that?" She shrugged. "I read a lot." He tried again at an art gallery opening the following week. Standing in front of a piece by a contemporary artist Marcus had invested in, he started to explain the cultural significance, the technique, the market value. Sarah listened politely, then pointed to a brushstroke in the corner. "He used a palette knife here, not a brush. You can see the texture. It's what makes this piece different from his earlier work. More aggressive, more honest." Marcus's jaw tightened. "I didn't know you studied art." "I didn't," she replied, moving to the next painting. "I just pay attention." The unsettling moments piled up like cracks in a foundation. Marcus was in a meeting when his phone rang. Sarah. He ignored it. She called again. And again. Finally, his assistant burst into the conference room, panicked. "Mr. Blackwell, there's a crisis with the Singapore deal. The contract has a clause we missed. They're threatening to pull out." Marcus's heart sank. That deal was worth $50 million. He rushed out, grabbing his phone, about to call his legal team when his assistant stopped him. "Sir, your wife already handled it." "What?" "She called our lawyers, identified the problematic clause, negotiated an amendment, and the clients just signed off. The deal is back on." Marcus stood frozen in the hallway. "Sarah did that?" "Yes, sir. She said she tried to reach you first, but when she couldn't, she took care of it. She was very professional." He found Sarah at home, reading on the couch like nothing had happened. "You saved the Singapore deal?" She looked up from her book. "You weren't answering. Someone had to. How did you even know what to do?" "Marcus, it wasn't complicated. I read the contract, saw the issue, fixed it." She returned to her book. "You're welcome, by the way." That weekend, they attended a charity gala. One of those events where the city's elite gathered to write checks and network. Marcus had always excelled at these. Schmoozing, charming, closing deals disguised as casual conversation. But that night, he watched Sarah work the room like a master. She spoke with the mayor, laughing at his jokes, offering insightful comments about urban development policy. She engaged a group of investors in a conversation about emerging markets, dropping terms and statistics Marcus had to Google later. She conversed with a French diplomat entirely in French, fluid and effortless, while Marcus stood beside her, understanding nothing. People were drawn to her, genuinely drawn to her. Derek found Marcus by the bar, his expression somewhere between confused and impressed. Your maid wife is different than we expected, he said, watching Sarah charm a venture capitalist across the room. Marcus didn't respond. He was too busy trying to figure out who the hell he'd married. That night he couldn't sleep. While Sarah slept peacefully beside him, Marcus pulled out his laptop. He started digging. Background checks, social media deep dives, public record searches. He found her employment history with the cleaning company, an address, a driver's license, basic tax records. But before that, nothing. It was like Sarah Mitchell didn't exist until 3 years ago. No college records, no childhood photos, no digital footprint, just a clean slate that started in her mid-20s. Marcus's hands trembled as he closed the laptop. The next morning he confronted her. "Who are you really, Sarah?" She was making coffee, calm as ever. She poured 2 cups, handed him one. "I'm your wife. Isn't that what you wanted?" "Don't play games with me," she smiled, that smile, the one that made his blood run cold. "I learned from the best." Marcus slammed his cup on the counter. "What does that mean?" "It means," Sarah said, meeting his eyes, "that you're not the only one who knows how to play, Marcus." The words hung in the air like a threat or a promise. He couldn't tell which. She walked past him, leaving him standing in the kitchen, more confused than he'd ever been in his life. But here's the thing Marcus didn't expect. Despite all the mystery, despite the games, despite the fact that he clearly didn't know who Sarah really was, something else was happening. He was falling for her. Really falling. He noticed the way she treated the building staff, learning their names, asking about their families, slipping the doorman's daughter a book she thought she'd enjoy. He saw her volunteer at a homeless shelter on weekends, serving food with genuine warmth. He watched her read by the window in the afternoons, sunlight catching in her hair, and his chest would tighten with something he'd never felt before. She had depth, real depth, kindness that wasn't performative, intelligence that didn't need to prove itself. And when she laughed, really laughed at something stupid he said, Marcus felt his carefully constructed walls crumble. The bet didn't matter anymore. The $1 million was irrelevant. He was in love with Sarah, whoever she was. But the guilt of how it all started ate at him like poison. Every time she smiled at him, every time she touched his hand, every time she kissed him goodnight, he felt the weight of his deception crushing his chest. He'd built their entire relationship on a lie, and Marcus Blackwell had no idea how to fix that. But he knew sooner or later, the truth would destroy them both. Marcus couldn't take it anymore. The guilt was eating him alive from the inside out. Every morning he woke up next to Sarah. Every time she smiled at him with genuine warmth, every moment of happiness felt like a lie he was suffocating under. 3 months into their marriage on a quiet Tuesday night, something inside him broke. Sarah was curled up on the couch reading, the lamp casting soft shadows across her face. She looked peaceful, content, real, and Marcus couldn't live with himself another second. Sarah. She looked up from her book, sensing something in his tone. "What's wrong?" His hands were shaking, his throat tight. "I need to tell you the truth about why I married you." Sarah closed her book slowly, set it aside. Her expression didn't change. Calm, always so calm. "Go ahead," she said. Marcus stood, unable to sit still. The words felt like shards of glass in his throat. "It was a bet." Silence. "Derek challenged me, said I couldn't marry someone outside my world and make it work. There was money involved, $1 million. His voice cracked. "I chose you because I thought you'd be easy to manipulate, that you'd be so overwhelmed by my life you'd never question why I picked you." Tears started streaming down his face. He didn't try to stop them. "I lied to you from the beginning, every accidental meeting, every coffee, every conversation. It was all calculated, all planned." He looked at her, desperate. "But Sarah, I fell in love with you. Really. That part wasn't fake. Somewhere along the way, you stopped being part of a bet and became everything to me." He waited for her to scream, to cry, to throw something at him. Sarah didn't move. She stood slowly, walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows and stared out at the city lights below. The silence stretched so long, Marcus thought he might collapse from the weight of it. Finally, she turned back to face him. And she smiled. That mysterious smile he'd seen so many times before. I know. Marcus froze. What? I've known from the beginning, Marcus. The room tilted. He couldn't breathe. That's not possible. Sarah walked toward him, each step deliberate. The night you first talked to me in the office, I'd already heard you, 2 nights before. You and Derek sitting in the conference room after hours discussing the bet. You thought the building was empty, but I was cleaning the ventilation ducts on the floor above. Sound travels in strange ways through old buildings. Marcus felt his legs weaken. You knew? Every word, the bet, the $1 million, the plan to manipulate some poor, naive woman who didn't know better. Her voice was steady, but there was steel underneath. I could have exposed you right then, told building security, gone to the press. You would have been destroyed. Why didn't you? Sarah stopped a few feet away from him. Because I was curious. Curious if the Marcus Blackwell I'd heard about was as broken as he seemed. Curious if underneath all that arrogance was an actual human being capable of growth, of change, of real love. Marcus's mind was spinning. Who are you? She took a breath. My name isn't Sarah Mitchell. It's Sarah Montgomery. The name hit him like a freight train. Montgomery. Richard Montgomery. Richard Montgomery was my father, Sarah continued, watching the recognition flood Marcus's face. The man who mentored you when you were nobody, who gave you your first real advice about building a company, who believed in you when no one else did. Marcus staggered backward. That's impossible. Richard never mentioned a daughter. He did. You just weren't paying attention. Her voice softened slightly. He talked about me at your 3rd meeting, showed you a picture, but you were too focused on your pitch, too obsessed with your own success to care about the personal life of the man helping you. Marcus's throat closed. He remembered now, vaguely, a mention of a daughter studying abroad, a photograph he'd barely glanced at. My father died 5 years ago, Sarah continued. Heart attack, sudden. He left me everything, his investments, his properties, his fortune, millions of dollars I never wanted and never asked for. She walked back to the window, her reflection ghostly in the glass. I spent 2 years trying to figure out what to do with a life I didn't earn. I had money I didn't need for a life I didn't want. So I gave most of it away, started living simply, took ordinary jobs, tried to find something real in a world full of fakes. Marcus could barely process what he was hearing. The cleaning job? He whispered. Part of a documentary project I was funding, about income inequality, about how society treats people based on their perceived status. I was living it, experiencing it firsthand. She turned back to him. And then you showed up with your expensive suit and your rehearsed charm, looking at me like I was a commodity, a means to an end. Sarah, I wanted to teach you a lesson, Marcus, about judging people by their circumstances, about thinking you're better than everyone else. Her eyes locked onto his. But I also wanted to see something else. I wanted to know if you were capable of actual love, or if you were too broken, too corrupted by your own success to ever be real. The weight of her words crushed him. So this whole time, Marcus said, his voice barely above a whisper, you were playing me? Yes. Everything was fake. Sarah's expression softened for the first time. The hardness in her eyes faded, replaced by something else. Something that looked almost like pain. Not all of it, Marcus. He looked up at her, hope and devastation warring in his chest. I plan to teach you a lesson and leave, she continued quietly, to expose you at the 6-month mark and walk away. But then something happened I didn't expect. What? Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. You changed, really changed. The man who started bringing coffee to the cleaning staff after meeting me, who learned people's names, who cried when he told me about his lonely childhood. That man was real. Tears welled in her eyes. I watched you become someone better, someone kinder, someone I could actually fall in love with. She wiped her cheek. So no, Marcus. Not all of it was fake. The part where I fell for you, that was the realest thing I've ever felt. Marcus stood there, broken and whole at the same time. Two liars who'd found truth. Two players who'd lost their own game. And in the wreckage of their deception, something beautiful and terrifying had grown. Something neither of them knew how to name. The silence between them was suffocating. Marcus and Sarah stood in the penthouse. Two people who'd built a marriage on lies, now faced with the wreckage of their own making. Sarah moved first. She walked to the bedroom and returned with a leather journal, worn at the edges. She held it out to him. "What is this?" Marcus asked, his voice hoarse. "Read it." He opened the journal carefully. The first entry was dated 3 months ago, the night after their wedding. "I told myself this was just a lesson, a way to teach an arrogant man about humility. But tonight, watching him sleep, I felt something I didn't expect. Guilt. Not for the deception, but for the possibility that I might actually hurt him." Marcus's hands trembled as he flipped through the pages. Entry after entry. Sarah's handwriting raw and honest. Week 2. He remembered that I like my coffee black. Such a small thing, but no one's remembered details about me in years. Week 5. He donated to the shelter without telling me. I only found out because the director mentioned it. He's changing. Or maybe he always had this in him, buried under all that armor. Week 8. I'm in trouble. Real trouble. Because I'm falling in love with him, and I don't know how to stop. Tears blurred Marcus's vision as he read. These weren't the words of someone playing a game. These were the confessions of someone struggling with the same guilt that had been eating him alive. "I started this as a lesson," Sarah said softly, "but I fell in love with you too." Marcus looked up at her. "When?" "I saw you change. The man who brought coffee to the cleaning staff after meeting me, who started asking people's names, who stopped treating service workers like they were invisible." Her voice caught. "Who cried when he told me about his lonely childhood, about building walls because no one ever chose him first?" She stepped closer. "You became real, Marcus, and that's when I fell. That's when this stopped being about teaching you a lesson and started being about hoping we could find something true in all the lies." They stood facing each other in the middle of the penthouse. Two liars who'd accidentally found truth. Two manipulators who'd been manipulated by their own hearts. "So what now?" Marcus asked, his voice breaking. "We both used each other. We both lied. How do we come back from that?" Sarah met his eyes. "Or maybe we both found what we were actually looking for." The vulnerability in the air was thick enough to drown in. Marcus took a shaky breath. "I don't want the bet money." "I don't want my father's money," Sarah replied. They stared at each other, and then, almost simultaneously, they asked the same question. "What do you want?" Marcus spoke first, his voice barely a whisper. "I want you. The real you, not the maid, not the heiress, just Sarah. The woman who reads Camus and corrects me about wine and volunteers at shelters because she actually cares. That's who I want." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I want you too. Not the tech mogul, not the man trying to win a bet. Just Marcus, the man who's learning to be kind, who's trying to be better. That's who I fell in love with." The distance between them disappeared. Marcus pulled her into his arms and they held each other like two people who'd survived a shipwreck. "We can't undo what we did," Sarah whispered against his chest. "No," Marcus agreed, "but maybe we can start over. For real this time." The next morning, Marcus called Derek. "I'm withdrawing from the bet," he said. Derek laughed. "You're quitting? Marcus Blackwell doesn't quit." "I'm not quitting. I'm choosing something more important than winning." Marcus looked at Sarah across the room. "And I'm donating the $1 million to the New Hope shelter, the place where Sarah volunteers." There was silence on the other end. Then Derek's voice quieter. "You really love her, don't you?" "Yeah, I really do." A week later, Sarah invited Marcus's friends to dinner at the penthouse. Derek, Tyler, Jason, all of them came expecting another awkward evening with the maid wife. Instead, Sarah stood before them in a simple dress and told them the truth. My name is Sarah Montgomery. My father was Richard Montgomery. He left me a fortune when he died. I've been living under a different name, doing ordinary work, because I wanted to understand what real life felt like. She looked directly at Derek. And yes, I heard your bet. All of it. I married Marcus knowing exactly what he was doing. The room was dead silent. And before you judge him, Sarah continued, know that he became a better man through this. We both did. So whatever you think about us, keep it to yourself, because we're done playing games. Derek stared at her, then at Marcus. Slowly, a smile spread across his face. I'll be damned. 6 months later, Marcus and Sarah stood in the same place they'd gotten married the first time. City Hall. But this time, it was different. This time, there were no lies. They renewed their vows with only a handful of people present. The shelter director, a few volunteers, people who mattered. When the officiant asked if Marcus took Sarah to be his wife, he looked into her eyes and said, I do. For real this time. Sarah smiled through tears. I do too. For real. Their life together became something neither of them expected. They worked side by side on charitable projects, built housing for the homeless, created job training programs, used their combined resources not for luxury, but for purpose. Marcus learned to find fulfillment in helping others. Sarah found peace in being known for who she really was. And one quiet Sunday morning, Marcus walked into their home office to find Sarah on her knees, scrubbing a coffee stain from the carpet. He smiled. You know you don't have to do that anymore. She looked up at him, her eyes sparkling with that same mysterious smile he'd fallen in love with. I know, but some habits remind me of where I found something real. Marcus knelt beside her, taking the cloth from her hands. Then let me help. She laughed, and the sound filled the room like sunlight. They kissed, soft and unhurried. Two people who'd found each other in the most unlikely way. Sometimes the biggest lies lead to the deepest truths. What started as a game, a bet between wealthy men with too much money and too little purpose, became the realest thing either of them had ever known. Marcus and Sarah didn't just find love. They found themselves. In the deception, in the lies, in the games they played with each other, they discovered something neither expected: honesty, vulnerability, growth, and a love that was worth more than any bet could ever measure. What would you have done in Sarah's position? If you overheard someone making a bet about you, would you have exposed them immediately or played along to see if they could change? Drop your answer in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that people can change and that love can grow in the strangest places, hit that subscribe button. We share stories about love, redemption, second chances, and the beautiful mess of being human. Don't miss the next one, because sometimes the best love stories start with the worst intentions, and sometimes two wrongs really do make a right.